From destroying meteors to conquering the world and even destroying planets. Yup, it gets that crazy. Ryu barely makes the top 10 because today I'm ranking the strongest characters in Street Fighter. But honestly, you can barely call them Street Fighters at this point because they're destroying cities and sinking islands, all that crazy stuff. But slow down, because before we get started, my last video got way over 2,000 likes, which means I gotta shave. The things I do for you people. Be honest though, how bad is it? I'm gonna shave the sideburns later. I just thought today's video would be extra epic if I kept this really bizarre facial hair. And get this, if today's video gets 3,000 likes, then I'll shave the entire beard, alright? Completely bald face. And yes, it's gotta be 3,000 likes because my girlfriend loves the beard, so to part with it means at least 3,000 likes. But alright, today's video is not about me. Leave a like down below for Street Fighter and let me know your favorite character down in the comments. Alright everyone, here we go, ranking the top 10 strongest characters in Street Fighter. Not in the exact right order though, because I want to keep things interesting. In other words, I'm not going to start at number 10 and then work my way down to number 1. I want to keep things more exciting than that. So first up, let's talk about Bison. This guy got humbled in Street Fighter V, but make no mistake, he's still an absolute powerhouse, nearly conquering the entire world at one point. In fact, at multiple points, because I think in Street Fighter 0 he got really close too, to conquering the entire world. Which means he's obviously very powerful. Bison is the master of psycho power, which essentially means there's no goodness in his body whatsoever. Then on top of that, Bison's also immortal, essentially, because anytime he dies, his soul gets transferred into a clone of his own body. Cammy is a clone, Abel's a clone, I think Seth is a clone, and yeah, you get the idea. Bison's got tons of extra bodies, that way he never stays dead, which is why he's definitely one of the top 10 strongest characters in Street Fighter, but not the top 5, not even close actually. So next up, let's talk about Rose, one of the only women to make the top 10 strongest characters in Street Fighter, and she's basically the opposite of Bison, fighting with soul energy, which is pretty much pure goodness and no evil whatsoever. However, on top of that, Rose can also see the future to an extent, which is a power that Bison does not have. I bet he wishes he could see the future, but nope, he just can't. Also, some fans believe that Rose defeated Bison in the Street Fighter Alpha series. I'm not entirely sure if that's canon or not, because if she did beat Bison, why is he still around? You know what I mean? She claimed to cut off his psycho energy completely, and yet Bison's back in the very next game, so what's going on here? Anyways, Rose is very powerful. Next up, let's talk about Ryu, alright? The main protagonist of the series, and in Street Fighter 6, he's stronger than he's ever been. At this point in time, I'd argue that Ryu is a top 5 character in Street Fighter, maybe top 6, it's debatable, but yeah, Ryu's up there. This man's a master of the Assassin's Fist and also unlocked the power of nothingness, which sounds like a silly name, but it's actually a very big deal. Because not only did it make Ryu more powerful, but also it counters the Dark Hado, which is what Akuma uses. So in other words, Ryu might finally be close to Akuma's level. However, we can't mention Ryu without talking about Ken. He's no longer on Ryu's level yet, but that could change because in every game, these characters go back and forth. Sometimes Ken is stronger, other times Ryu is stronger. It goes back and forth. And Ken's had it really rough in Street Fighter 6, so I would not be surprised if he unlocks a new level of ability based on that stress alone. In other words, Ken might get pushed to his absolute limits and become even stronger. Alright everybody, one more character before reaching the top 5 Street Fighter characters, and that's our boy Goken. Longtime Street Fighter fans know about this guy, new fans might not. So understand, this man trained Ryu, he trained Ken, and at one point defeated Akuma in a fair fight. That's right, which shows you how powerful Goken is. Later on, Akuma got the run back and supposedly killed Goken, but nope, turns out Goken survived and became even powerful after the fact. In Street Fighter 4, it's heavily implied they had a rematch and we don't know who actually won, because Akuma is a master of the Dark Hado, whereas Goken is the original master of nothingness, which, like mentioned earlier, is a hard counter to the Dark Hado, so nobody knows who won this actual battle. My money's on Akuma, just because he usually wins, the writers prefer this guy. guy, but as of right now, fans have no idea who actually won this battle. And regardless, Goken is still a top 10 strongest character in Street Fighter. Real quick though, 2 honorable mentions. Charlie Nash and Gen. Both these characters are very powerful in their own right, however at this point both are canonically dead. That's right, or at least I think Gen is dead. If not, the man's at least at death's door and has a terminal illness, so he's not as strong now as he was back in the Alpha series. He's only gotten weaker. However, back in his prime, Gen was so powerful, the writers said, yeah, he can beat Akuma in his ending. Keep in mind that almost never happens. Basically, nobody is ever allowed to beat Akuma, even in their own arcade ending, and yet Gen did, which shows you how powerful the writers believe Gen to be. Now, once again, this was decades ago in the Street Fighter Alpha series when Ryu and Ken were still teenagers or something. If we fast forward to Street Fighter 6, Gen is either dead or very badly suffering from his terminal illness. But then we have Charlie Nash, who is guaranteed dead. We saw him die a second time in Street Fighter 5. Before that, he already died in Street Fighter Alpha 2, I think? Anyways, at one point, Charlie was so powerful, he defeated Bison in a 1v1, like straight up. And keep in mind, Bison was extra powerful in the Alpha series. That's arguably when Bison was the strongest, and yet Charlie Nash still beat him in a fair 1v1. Then later in Street Fighter V, he got revived into a dead body, which was weaker than his original form, and yet he was still dusting pretty much everyone. From Guile to Rashid, Chun-Li, you get the idea, losing only to Urien, who's an absolute powerhouse in his own right. Or in other words, Charlie was still legit, even in a severely weakened dead body. Alright everyone, here we go. You've waited long enough. It's time to rank the top 5 strongest characters in Street Fighter. Who goes where is somewhat up to debate. I'll let you share your own opinions in the comments section, because I'm gonna share my personal thoughts as well. At number 5, we have Gil, first introduced in Street Fighter 3, and this man can do basically anything from summoning blizzards to meteors. The man's got angel wings with attacks that cover the entire screen and do a ton of damage. Then on top of all of that, the man can resurrect himself, like whenever he wants to. And I don't think there's a limit. If there is, the games and comics have never stated this, which means theoretically Gil can't lose permanently. The man can resurrect on the spot and just get all of his health back right then and there. So with all that in mind, in my personal opinion, Gil should be the strongest character in Street Fighter. However, I don't think the writers agree, because Gil has lost fights against characters like Akuma and also Bison. However, it's also implied that Gil loses these fights on purpose to gauge how powerful his enemies are, because he can always resurrect and no harm done, right? And we've never seen Gil go all out in a fight, which unfortunately you're gonna hear me say a lot from this point on in the video, because essentially every character in the top 5 has never gone 100% all in during a fight. They're always holding back a little bit. For example, Akuma. This guy's so powerful, he's destroyed meteors. He's punched islands so hard they fell apart into the ocean and essentially sank. He's even uppercutted a submarine. That's right, a full-on metal heavy as hell submarine. Akuma uppercutted that with the dragon punch and sent it flying. So yeah, this man is nuts. He's honestly very overpowered. And just like Gil, we've never seen Akuma go all out. That form is called Shin Akuma, but I don't think canonically it's ever happened. Even so, I'd argue that Akuma is a top 3 strongest character in Street Fighter. He's not number 1. Alright, I'll tell you who number 1 is. But Akuma could be number 2, alright? Along with Oro. This man has trained his entire life in secret as a hermit to become as powerful as possible. And unlike Akuma, his powers are not all physical. Many of them are though. This guy can leap really high, throw gigantic rocks like they're nothing, grab somebody with one hand and toss him around like a rag doll. So yes, Oro is really strong. However, on top of that, he also has telekinesis. That's right, just straight up, this man can move things with his mind casually on a whim, which obviously is very overpowered, and I think in the comics it's implied he can read your mind and also see the future. So yeah, Oro's very overpowered. Then on top of all of that, get this, Oro's never fought with both hands. That's right, during every single fight in all the games he's playable, Oro's only fighting with one hand. The other arm is either restrained or simply not being used during the fight, like holding a turtle in Street Fighter V or something goofy like that. Which means, just like Akuma, Akuma and also Gil, Oro has never gone all out in a fight. And to give my honest opinion, I think Oro might be stronger than Akuma. That's just my personal opinion. I could be wrong. But real quick, we've got to talk about Ingrid. Not much is known about this character since canonically she hasn't done much in the Street Fighter series. She appears in the Alpha 3 game and beats Bison casually, twice actually, in the same arcade ending. So yeah, Ingrid is definitely very powerful, and on top of that, she's a time traveler, just fixing problems throughout history and also fighting increasingly stronger opponents. So yeah, theoretically, Ingrid is very, very powerful, possibly even stronger than Akuma. However, like mentioned earlier, we barely know anything about Ingrid, so for today's video, she's just gonna be in the top 5 and not the top 3, because there's just not enough information on her. And alright everyone, here you go, the moment you've been waiting for, the strongest character in Street Fighter. It's not Akuma, instead it's his evolved ascended form. That's right, I'm talking about Oni, baby. First appeared in Street Fighter 4. And theoretically, he's what happens when Akuma finally masters the Dark Hado completely and transcends humanity to pierce heaven itself. Or in other words, he's gone full demon time and can take down heaven all by himself, possibly even destroying the earth. In fact, I think Street Fighter 4 straight up says this, that Oni has the ability to destroy the entire planet if he wants to. The guy's just that powerful. Which sounds crazy, but don't forget that Akuma has already destroyed meteors and sunk islands, all that crazy stuff. So if Oni is Akuma on steroids, then yeah, I believe he can destroy an entire planet. Sounds fair to me. But alright everyone, there you have it, the top 10 strongest characters in Street Fighter history. In my opinion, here's the official ranking from number 10 to number 1. But make sure to let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Which character do you think is the strongest in Street Fighter? Thanks for watching everyone, and I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like down below, it helps the channel out a ton, and then finish that combo by subscribing and ringing that bell so you never miss any future videos. Make sure to come back next time, and as always, stay underdogs.